Hello, everyone. Thank you, Reverend Pat, for inviting me to preach today. I started writing this sermon from a motel room in Myrtle Beach, which is where Francis and I ended up on our bike trip. I remember preaching at almost the same time last year and telling everyone about our bike trip in Florida. But this year we didn't go to Florida, mainly because the politics there felt hostile, especially to trans people, and we didn't want to be there. So instead we rode our bikes from here to Myrtle Beach, which was another kind of adventure that did include ugly things like Confederate flags and Trump flags and Let's Go Brandon signs, but supportive things too, like Love is Love banners and gay flags and conscientious drivers who passed us with such care. This was a new feeling I had about cars passing around us on the narrow 2-lane roads, how some cars were gentle and others menacing, like the wide trucks with revved up engines, seeming to want to blow us off the edge. I don't mean to stereotype, but it simply was true that the revved up trucks were the aggressive ones. And something else I felt, an unsettling thing, was the implied threat in American flags, and worse, in signs praising Jesus, which were threats I've been feeling already, but in a starker way now, and with a more pronounced personal vulnerability. I felt more literally exposed. A few times along the way I had disturbing flashes of scenes from the movie Easy Rider even. And when I took off my t-shirt to swim, when I bared my manly trans chest, as I've always so loved to do, I felt an acute self-consciousness that alarmed me. I had a fearful sense that because of anti-trans sentiment, people would be far more aware of what transmasculine top surgery scars look like, and so would spot mine and be hostile to me. Which didn't happen though, and the trucks didn't really blow us off the road, and no one was mean to us, except once a teenager screamed faggot at me, and a girl in a convertible VW Bug with peace signs and flower decals all over it flipped us the bird as she passed by. Overall, the bike trip was full of fun and sun and wholesome encounters and challenges and feelings of awe at creation. I'm telling you about the insecurities too because I think that all of this has something to do with the gospel verse about faith, or with my own relationship to faith that I can explore. Faith in God and in myself and in humanity. This is the verse from Matthew. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go on ahead to the other side, while dismissing the crowds. And having dismissed the crowds, Jesus went up the mountain alone to pray. When evening came, Jesus was there alone, but by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning Jesus came walking toward them on the sea. When the disciples saw Jesus walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered, "Sovereign, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when Peter noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Sovereign, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught Peter, saying, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped Jesus, saying, "Truly, you are the child of God." So, a lot of things have happened in this chapter before the verses we're reading today. John the Baptist has been beheaded, and Jesus has been told about it. Jesus tries to have a solitary time to process this, but crowds of people follow him, becoming the multitude that Jesus feeds with the scant loaves and fishes. Then Jesus sends the disciples ahead in the boat and takes time alone on a mountainside. Then he walks on the water. Something else about our bike trip was that we rode on ferries, 5 of them, I think, and 2 of them that were really long rides. which was kind of like riding bikes across the water, or like getting across the water in a miraculous way. And still another thing was the wind, how strong it was, and whether it was a headwind or a tailwind, and how it made so much difference which one. Riding the bike could either feel like flying or like pushing against a solid wall, or something in between. Mostly for us, it felt like flying. Having the wind at one's back is a wonderful thing to wish for people, I've learned. May the wind be ever at your back. But the wind in the gospel verse was a headwind. The reading from 1 Kings also talks about wind. When Elijah is standing on the mountain waiting for God to pass, a great and powerful wind tears the mountains apart and shatters the rocks before God, but God is not in the wind. God isn't in the earthquake or the fire either. God is a gentle whisper Elijah hears, which seems to me to mean that God isn't using dramatically elemental external things to impress or overwhelm or intimidate Elijah, but is instead a gentle voice that Elijah can hear inside of himself. God is internal. And what stands out to me in the reading about Jesus walking on the water is that the faith and lack of faith being exemplified by Peter isn't faith in Jesus' power to do a miraculous thing, but Peter's faith in himself to do it. Jesus doesn't need Peter to believe in what Jesus is doing. Jesus is walking on the water whether Peter believes it or not. He's not being a show-off about it either, but is just calmly doing it, almost absent-mindedly. And Peter doesn't fully believe anyway. He needs the proof of Jesus calling out to him to come. So Jesus says, come, and Peter walks on the water toward Jesus. But when Peter becomes afraid, he starts to sink and cries out to Jesus to save him. And Jesus reaches out to him to save him and says, you of little faith. But Peter seems to have enough faith in Jesus' ability to save him. He just doesn't have enough to believe that he, Peter, can walk on the water, even after Jesus tells him to come and proves to him that yes, he actually can. Peter's lack of faith is in himself, not in Jesus. I keep running this around in my thoughts and kind of arguing with myself about it, though. I'm thinking to myself, but still, Peter's faith needed to be in Jesus initially, in a belief in Jesus' power that would enable Peter to walk on the water. It wasn't a belief in some personal power Peter could find in himself to do it. Peter's short-lived demonstration of faith required that Jesus be there to speak it, to say, come. But what if Peter's belief in divine power and also in his own power are the same thing, the same belief, the same presence and or absence of faith? Peter can do all things through Christ who strengthens him. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us.
Yes, we can.
I think this is what's revelatory. We have divinity inside of us and can believe in it and do all things.
That's right.
We can believe in ourselves because of believing in the divinity inside of us. This is our individual faith.
That's right.
And we can have a collective faith in humanity too, in our collective ability to do all things.
That's right.
I'm thinking of us as a whole perhaps being of greater faith collectively than we are individually, with all of us having differing measures of individual faith, sometimes with spurts of great individual faith, like Peter's first steps, and other times with faith-shattering fear, like Peter's. It was fear that negated Peter's faith and caused him to sink. So an aspect of faith must be that we face our fear. But when Peter's fear overcomes him, Jesus steps in. And maybe we can step in for each other in instances when fear overcomes one of us. Something on our trip that so moved me about people stepping in for each other was the bicycle policy of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. This is a bridge and tunnel construction that traverses 17 miles of the Chesapeake Bay, but doesn't allow bicycles to cross. Instead, the official policy is that bicyclists are to call ahead to say they're coming, and a person in a van will meet them and load up the bikes and drive them across. The service is free. Our bike route took us to this point along the East Coast where we were cared for by strangers in this way, of being whisked across the Chesapeake Bay, almost like teleportation. But the even more amazing thing I learned was that there was also a special free service for anyone who felt afraid of driving across the long bridge. The driving service involved having someone from the Bridge and Tunnel Agency step in and ride with the frightened person as the driver of their vehicle in their stead. Because maybe sometimes, instead of cheering on a person and having extra faith in them to do a thing that frightens them, the caring thing is to help them do the frightening thing, to let them have faith in you to help. Where your faith is hindered by fear, I will be confident for you, and you will offer me your faith in me to do what frightens you. An even more touching instance of someone stepping in to help a frightened person was something I read online about a person on the autism spectrum, posting on social media that they'd never been to a Subway restaurant before and were scared to go. They wished that someone could explain to them the process of ordering the Subway sandwich and what they would be asked to do by the server. So a caring person responded to their post in a matter-of-fact way of writing out a detailed step-by-step instruction of what the server would ask and the different ways the scared person could respond, such as choosing 6 inches or 12 inches and what kind of bread and what kind of fillings and condiments and do you want a drink or not. And the scared person later reported back that they'd carefully followed the instructions and had successfully ordered a sandwich from Subway. They now believe that they could visit a Subway in the future and would follow the instructions and be okay. They were grateful for the kind help and also empowered by it, by their faith in it, and by their new faith in themselves to do it. And this is a story that was a welcome boost to my faith in humanity all around, and also gave me ideas about ways I could ask for such instructive help and could have faith in another's willingness to step in for me and help me, and ways I could be called upon to give help to someone else, to let someone else have faith in me to help. I would want to be as plainly helpful as this example, without any motive of changing the nervous person into a more daring person, but simply filling in what they needed for their nervous self to move forward. A mingling and enlarging of our individual measures of faith, a balancing of faith. I'm not sure if this is what the gospel verse is talking about, but I feel led here by the verse. Whatever is happening in the verse from Matthew, it does involve differing measures and kinds of faith interacting with each other. Also, I think I've been influenced by the Barbie movie to not need everyone to be exceptionally confident. Is faith the same as confidence? I think so, or it's something very much like it. But we went to see the Barbie movie on our bike trip at an especially magical place called Emerald Isle, after having ridden through a desolate, marshy area that felt so far away from safety to me, and with little towns scattered in between the marshes, with occasional Confederate flags waving from the porches, and no gay flags at all. I felt heavy with existential anxieties like Barbie was feeling. And then I felt lightened and healed to a great degree by sharing my feelings with Barbie. I'm not kidding. I remember after the movie was over and we were standing up from our seats and I said to Francis that I truly felt helped by the movie. And just then I caught the eye of a man sitting behind us with a group of older people and knew that he'd heard what I said. And I think I saw him smiling inside himself about me being helped, as if he'd been helped by Barbie too. But I want to think more about what it means to have abundant confidence or faith. Is faith a belief in someone's power to do a particular thing? If I have faith in you to do something, it means that I confidently believe that you can certainly do it. And we can also have faith in our own power to do things, faith in ourselves. Yes, I can, yes, I can, yes, I can. To have faith in God means to believe in God.
That's right.
Great faith is a combination of confidence and belief. But do you believe in faith in a literal way? I mean, do you believe that a person can literally move mountains with faith the size of a mustard seed? That they can walk on the water or fly through the air if they just can believe in themselves enough? Is faith a potential for exhibiting an exceptional ability, like a supernatural power? I know that throughout my life, I've read or been told or otherwise led to believe that human beings are only using a fraction of their brain power. That somehow studies show that we have unused parts or underused parts of our brains. That we can't even imagine what we might achieve with a wholly confident application of our total brain potential. Maybe it's an evolutionary thing that will happen to us if we get to evolve more on the earth. If we haven't already gone too far with abusing the natural world because of how greedy we are. Do you think we've already gone too far? But that's a different topic. But maybe our development of greater faith will be what allows us to change course and heal the earth. Someone I follow on Instagram, a drag queen performer, is often highlighting instances of bigotry and ignorance on their page and calling for the hateful, stubborn people to evolve already. Maybe when we can evolve enough to love each other, we will also be able to walk on the water like Jesus. Do you ever think of Jesus as being a kind of prototype of an evolved human being? That all of Jesus' compassion and healing power and other miracle working and insight and connection to loving creation, to God, are ways that all of us are meant to be? That Jesus is the example to follow, but also the model of who we're designed to ultimately be. Sometimes I think of Jesus as being an alien being, sent by God the Creator to steer us from our selfish ways and set us on this evolutionary path. I don't believe it's disrespectful of Jesus or God or humanity to imagine Jesus as an alien being akin to us, but far more fully evolved. Is it? I'm trying to exercise confidence in my own thought processes, but I'm prone to doubt them too. I wonder how everyone else envisions God. Do you see God as a solid being, or more as a misty kind of force, or invisible force that permeates everything, or something ethereal that exists inside of us? Do you have a certain image of God, or is God an overall sense of something that doesn't have a form? Something too vast and mind-boggling for our thoughts to contain, like infinity. Does the awesomeness of something like infinite space inspire you to confidently believe in God? Do you believe that we've encountered aliens on the earth and that the government is hiding it from us? Why aren't we talking more about this? Would knowing about it change anything? Has the world gotten so weird now that aliens aren't even that interesting to us? I feel worried about how we might have been treating them if we actually have had close encounters. That we aren't being open enough to be awed and excited and welcoming. That we've been treating them like undesirable others, like Greg Abbott is treating immigrant people. Evolve already, Greg Abbott. Something I came across recently was a report about time and how new research has determined that time has fits and starts and isn't a smooth thing. I can't find the source of this now, and I'm not sure if I'm misremembering it or getting it wrong altogether. But something I do remember is someone commenting that they didn't understand the physics of this new research at all, but did feel inspired by it to just be awed by the miraculous mechanics of creation. When I was in Myrtle Beach the first day, I walked on the beach access walkway to the end, where I could look out onto the ocean. A group of women were gathered there who seemed to me to be lesbians, which was a plus, and one of them was looking out on the ocean too, and turned to me and said, "God's creation." And we shared a moment of awe at this, a moment of faith. Maybe being faithful is also being amazed. It's when something almost like fear, like a gasp, turns into amazement. Maybe fear, instead of always being an antithesis to faith, is something that can also inspire faith. In the reading from Matthew, the disciples in the boat are first terrified and then amazed by what transpires. By Jesus walking on the water, by Peter's moment of walking on the water, by Jesus' reaching out to save Peter, by the wind subsiding when Jesus enters the boat. This amazement is what forms the basis of their belief in Jesus as the child of God. It isn't confidence that forms their faith, it's awe, or more specifically, fear transformed into awe. Maybe something we can do, as well as working on our confidence and sharing our measures of faith with each other and evolving together, is just let our fears turn into awe and be amazed more. That's my prayer for everyone right now, that we feel awestruck more than afraid. Amen.